From skyrocketing postal rates and tariff threats to the avalanche of state laws targeting subscriptions, privacy, and digital ads, the pressure on publishers is coming from all sides. And today on EMP Reports, we're going to pull back the curtain a bit on the policy battles that could make or break the business of news and news publishing for months, years, and maybe even decades to come. Joining us are two people who live on the front lines of that fight. We have Holly Lubart and Emily Emery, both VPs of Government Affairs at the News Media Alliance. Welcome. It's just so great to have both of you on the program.
Thank you, Mike. It's great to be here.
Mike, we're so glad to be here.
I mean, I think this is what's really good is because we're going to be like talking to those that Danielle Coffey, who is, I guess the CEO of NMA, describes you as walking the halls. Is that how you describe your job, Holly?
Absolutely. That's what we do, Mike. We walk the halls in Washington, D.C., and not only at the federal level, but at the state level as well. We monitor federal and state legislation.
Well, that's what we're going to talk about. And we're going to do it as we pose questions like, is your subscription model about to get upended? Will state privacy laws choke off your ad revenue? And is there any hope of relief from the rising costs of simply delivering the news? Stick around. We're going to break all that down right after this.
This episode of E&P Reports is exclusively sponsored by Blocks Digital, formerly Town News. Even though the name has changed, their commitment to the media industry is as strong as ever. Blocks Digital is now even better positioned to deliver integrated solutions like content management, audience development, advertising revenue, video management, and more. Join the over 2,000 news publishers worldwide that power their ongoing digital transformation with Blocks Digital, serving over 141 million monthly users who view over 6.5 billion pages of content each year. You can trust Blocks Digital to empower you, to connect you at scale with the community you need to reach. Blocks Digital, formerly Town News, now reimagined to help meet the news publishing challenges of tomorrow and beyond. Learn more at blocksdigital.com.
Okay, Emily, I'm going to need you to hum to yourself for a bit, okay? Because I'm going to start off with Holly and kick off with her. Holly, increasing postal rates are a big concern, and I know many of our smaller publishers are really feeling that pinch. Can you walk us through what's happening with postal pricing and what you guys are doing about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mike, for the question. So the USPS is really in bad shape. In fiscal year 2024, they lost $9.5 billion with a B. And in fiscal year 2023, they lost $6.5 billion. And in the last 4 years, they've lost about 12% total of mail and package volume since they began implementing what's called the Delivering for America plan, which is really a complete rehaul of the postal system. So the Postal Service has been increasing postage rates over the last several years at levels well above the rate of inflation. And that's leading to postal costs that are excessive and unsustainable for news and magazine publishers that rely on the postal system to deliver quality journalism for Americans. The Postal Service has raised periodicals rates generally twice a year, not always, but by a cumulative total of 47.8%. That's pretty staggering. And in July, newspapers and magazines are estimated to see another 11% increase. So since August of 2021, news and magazine publishers are seeing price increases that are, get this, 254% of the rate of inflation. So the Postal Service, they're reducing their service standards, and they're not even coming close to to getting these service targets. So we're seeing increased rates and poor service. And they're also continuing to roll out this Delivering for America plan, which is also slowing down service, and particularly in rural areas. So the News Media Alliance is part of several mailing industry coalitions who continue to raise concerns about rising postal costs and poor service delivery. Most recently, with the departure of the Postmaster General, we've asked for congressional leadership and the Postal Service Board of Governors to put a pause on those July rate increases and pause the Delivering for America plan until a permanent Postmaster General is put in place.
You also are working on auto renewal legislation. 20 states are introducing bills this year, and it's become quite the wave, right? One after another. What kinds of requirements are we seeing in these proposals on the state level, and how could they affect publishers' digital and print renewal models in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say it is a way. We're actively engaged to ensure that consumer protection is out there, but with workable business solutions for our members nationwide. We have model language and we work with states to try and keep the language really consistent. So we're seeing some really complex requirements that could ultimately really frustrate consumers rather than empower them. Specifically, we're seeing some provisions mandating multiple redundant notifications, separate consent pop-ups, and restrictions that prevent businesses from providing consumers really useful information about their accounts. Some are even really prescriptive and even dictating font sizes. So that would require some website subscription redesigns, payment systems, changes to marketing materials. So, we're really trying to work with a lot of these states to keep it consistent.
I mean, just because we have so many different publishers in so many different locations who listen to this program, are there any particular states you're flagging right now, or particular bills in states that are concern you more than others?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Mike, as you mentioned, there's 20 states that introduced legislation. So I'll just name a few that we have concerns on. We're really concerned about Connecticut, Georgia, Texas, and West Virginia. And we're really watching New York very closely. There's a lot of proposals out there in New York, but we have seen some favorable movement there. So we're hopeful that some of these bills will either die, get amended favorably, or we'll continue to work on them as we move forward.
All right, I want to go back to DC now with Emily, if I may. You're closely watching the tax reconciliation process, and can you unpack that for us? Treat me like I'm a 3-year-old, because I didn't even know this was a big issue.
3-year-olds can pay taxes too, Mike, definitely.
Well said, Emily. Go ahead.
Most importantly, we are looking at a potential $4.3 trillion tax increase if the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act provisions are not renewed. And these are back from 2017 with the previous Trump administration. They were set to sunset, and there's some major provisions that many publishers take advantage of and benefit from that are set to expire or have already expired. So that's been one core piece of advocacy that we've been doing on the front lines in DC to make sure that these business-friendly provisions that are pro-growth are reapplied or re-extended.
I'm going to bounce in a question. Normally we see a bipartisan understanding of the necessity for local journalism to be part of the fabric of our democracy, if I may editorialize. Are you still feeling that way? Is it still pretty bipartisan when you're in there? I mean, may I ask? I don't want to, trip on anything you're doing.
It's such a great question, Mike. One thing that we really want to reemphasize is there is a bipartisan support for journalism, particularly in the tax-making offices and the Ways and Means Committee and the Finance Committee in the Senate, where we're focused. One key advocacy issue that we've been focused on, and are glad to say that we have bipartisan support for, is preserving advertising deductibility, the ability to treat advertising as a normal business expense. That's huge to all publishers, and that's really what we've been focused on in our conversations. That being said, the overall reconciliation process is being run exclusively through Republican offices because of that trifecta of control. But that doesn't mean that we're not working both sides of the aisle.
When I spoke to Danielle about bringing you guys on the program, she kind of referred to you as the tax lady. So I hope you don't mind that, but she said you really focus on taxes. So I understand you even drill down to the state level. And is there actually proposals in some states to tax digital advertising? Do you see any patterns or momentum in that direction?
Mike, you're picking up on something really interesting that's happening. And I think a trend that applies to a lot of digital policy that we're seeing in the States. Back in 2020 and actually 21, when it was enacted, Maryland was the first state to enact a digital advertising tax. That's still under litigation, both at the federal and the state level, so heavily challenged. And they're the only state to have actually enacted it. That being said, 13 different legislatures considered a similar ad tax this year. And what I think we find most remarkable is these are not kind of the traditional Taxachusetts states, if we could say. It's not a blue state issue anymore. We were working in South Dakota. We were working in Montana. And so we have a two-tier strategy. One is first to generally oppose these. These are not good. These are not pro-growth policies. But fundamentally, if these legislatures decide they do need this as a revenue line, it's critical that news media be exempted from it, in the way that Maryland exempted news media from their provision.
When we're discussing digital ad taxes, this affects broadcast equally as it affects our neck of the woods. Do you have a counterpart at the NAB you work in tandem with on this?
Absolutely. And our other strong allies and partnerships are the state press associations and the state broadcaster associations. It's really critical that we work arm in arm. And in fact, in Maryland, the news media exemption recognizes exempting both print and broadcast from that tax.
I got to shift gears. Let's talk privacy, if we may. And I think that's still in your wheelhouse, especially again at the state level. What are some of the most significant new bills you're tracking on privacy at a state level, Emily?
Mike, in the privacy space, what's new is actually old. And so I think this is a big thing we anticipated, but I think we're struck by how really impactful what is happening at the state level in states that have already passed their privacy legislation. So we have 19 or 20 states, depending on how you count it, that have passed comprehensive privacy legislation. But rather than just sit and say, we've got this set for our state, these lawmakers are coming back to the table and reiterating and kind of innovating and creating new thresholds within the states that have already passed their privacy legislation. So what's old is new. And when we say old, we mean back to the heady days of 2018 in California. So this is a really, really fast moving landscape. And even the states that set their kind of first standard are iterating on what they're doing.
We're on the cusp of a large conference I have a panel at. And it'll be well attended by family owners of small newspaper properties. Francis Wick, I'm sure you know the Wick Company. Mark Adams will be there, and others. Ogden. There's just such a difference, state to state to state, and federal. How is this impacting those that own properties in multiple states? I mean, how are we getting under one framework here?
I think we're seeing that we're not, and that's a message that we're taking to DC as a new leadership in House Energy and Commerce and a new chair in Senate Commerce are looking at, is there a chance for preemption? Is there a chance for a comprehensive standard? And I think the complexity that we're seeing at the state level, and also the diversity of the states that are enacting their legislation and how different it looks from state to state, like you said, is particularly burdensome for small businesses, for family-owned businesses. And that's a message that we've been happy to carry. Compliance has such strong costs. And the other part that we're seeing at the state level is a connection to litigation, that there have been suits against a number of publications, not just on privacy legislation, but on older existing statutes. So, for example, wiretapping is coming into play as a risk factor. So as a small publisher, you really do have to look up and see what's happening at your state level and in your legislature, both from a compliance perspective and from a risk mitigation perspective.
All right, let me swing back to Holly now. Holly, you got an audience here of hundreds of news media executives, all shapes and stripes, all over the United States. How can we help you? I mean, like right now, when you put up the bat signal, that's what I call it, when you need local advocacy to help support what you're doing. Do you have one thing you'd like to say to these publishers? And I want you to stand by, Emily. You got a chance now to craft your thoughts, because I'm going to ask you the same question. Go ahead, Holly.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. Thank you so much. Absolutely, the importance of advocacy. Lawmakers want to hear from their constituents in their district. They're making decisions that impact publishers' bottom lines every day. And so we are the experts. The local publishers are the experts in the industry, and they really want to hear from you. And we are happy to work with all local publishers and, all the industry to really get our message across to lawmakers. Because I think a lot of lawmakers really do understand and want a free and a thriving, free and independent press.
All right, Emily, same question. Anything you'd like to augment that Holly just said?
Mike, Holly couldn't have said it better. We may be the experts in the policy matters, but the experts that legislatures want to hear from are the people in their districts and their constituencies. And that special expertise that local publishers have is huge and I think persuasive, both at the state level and at the federal level. So we really appreciate the opportunity to work with local publishers and carry that message, as well as the state associations.
As Holly Lubart and Emily Emery, both VPs of Government Affairs of the News Media Alliance. I know how hard you guys are working. I know your calendars are full. To have you guys carve off 20 minutes for this program is very special to us. Thanks for your hard work and keep up the good fight, ladies.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.